And she dated men that were like arrested by the FBI. And unfortunately, she left me alone a lot. And at a very young age, she worked a lot. You know, she was absent, so she needed someone to watch me. And for a while, it was this very nice old lady, and she had her granddaughter and her son. They lived with us or nearby, and that lady would take care of me. But once they went their separate ways, there was this other person or friend that my mom thought would be great to leave to be my babysitter, and it was a male. And at a very young age, this man started like sexually abusing me. And as a kid, you don't know. And that happened for a really long time. I never spoke out about it because, you know, I didn't know what was going on. And he would give me things. So I don't know. It felt like another adult caring for me.
Yeah.
I don't know anything else. So that went on for a really long time. And then sometimes he wasn't in the picture, and then unfortunately my mom left me alone in various places, so other men also did things, unfortunately. And then older boys too, like being left unsupervised, and then there's boys in the building, you know, and we all grow up together, but they're a little older, and they just, you know, do things too. So I was just left in a very vulnerable situations with no adults usually. And when I did finally tell my mom, when I was much older, about what that guy had been doing to me since I was very young. Eventually he stopped when I was like getting into that pre-teen because he knew like, oh, I can't get away with this too much longer. But then my mom had my baby sister. And, you know, my mom was working or whatever the fudge she was doing in a day, and he would take care of the kids sometimes. Most of the time, actually. Me too. And I was just like, what if he does this to my sister? I'm like, no. So I told my mom, and I was afraid to tell her, and because she did exactly what I thought she was going to do. She was like, wanted to kill him. The story goes that she stabbed him in the gut. The story goes. I always knew after 9/11, especially because the attack happened in New York, and then there was this story about my dad and my mom when they first got here, that they were like, they had never seen a skyscraper that tall, like from their country. And my father died when I was young too. He was 12 when he died, and I remember when that happened, I took it very personally because I had never seen the Twin Towers. And I was like, those mother effers. And I was already in ROTC, you know, like my mind, I was already interested in joining, but when that attack happened, that's when that really solidified my decision to join the military. And let me tell you, I was scribe this one time, and you know how they give you the lunch boxes and sometimes they don't give you enough time to eat? So you're like, oh, fuck it, put something in my pocket. So I had a granola bar in my pocket, and I'll never freaking forget this shit. I was scribe, pen! So I reach into my cargo pocket because it was the only thing I could have in there. It was the only pocket I could use. And I pull out this Ziploc bag with pins and a granola bar. Yep. And the granola bar. And she looks at me, she takes that shit. She's like, you're the new scribe. You go fuck off somewhere. And I was like, fuck. And then we get back to the bay, and she does a whole lecture. I was stationed at Okinawa, Japan. They asked me where I wanted to go after MOS school, and I was like, as far as I can get from my mom. So Okinawa, Japan, it was one of my selections, and not a lot of people want to go that far out. So I was able to go out there, and it was really exciting. It was a beautiful place, and I loved my job as motor T. I loved it because you got time to yourself, especially as a driver. You know, you have an A driver, and then there I was with a 7-ton being trusted as a 19-year-old to drive that through the narrow streets of Okinawa, Japan, and transport troops, millions of dollars of weapons, hazardous material, anything you name it. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe it. People trusted me at such a young age with that much responsibility and really money and equipment. So I loved it. I loved being a motor T. I loved like strapping it down and being really good at my job. Like I really enjoyed it. And 6 months into it, they came in. Our gunnery sergeant came in and they asked if anyone was interested in deploying to Iraq, and that we would be going with a whole separate unit from who knows where. They didn't even know what we were going to do. They're like, "Who wants to go?" And only 3 of us raised our hands, and we were all PFCs. So we were the only 3 from my platoon, and then they had to pick a sergeant. So there was a sergeant that also left from my platoon. So there was only 4 of us. And I volunteered because, like I said, I joined because of 9/11. So I was like, I want to go for that too, go to war for that. But also, I'm a first generation here, American. My parents migrated here. And at a very young age, I understood the privilege I had of being born on this side of the soil and having a social security number. Because for a period of time, I had cousins who came to this country from El Salvador as well. They were undocumented, and we lived in a house that had a backyard, and the laundry room that was in the back, we put that outside. So my aunt and his wife would sleep in there with their daughter, and then the boys would sleep in the backyard under this like awning, and they put up like curtains, and they just slept outside in the backyard. And they didn't go to school like I did. I noticed a difference, and I felt like because I didn't have like a lineage in this country, like other people do. I felt like I had to earn it, and I was very grateful. And so there's a couple of reasons that I joined, and that was another one, is I wanted to earn my family, my bloodline's right to be here. And what happened next was really unfortunate. We had to check out of our unit really quickly. And I don't really talk about this a lot, so I get a little, excuse me if I get a little
No problem.
emotional or whatever. So we're packing up real quick within a week once we got the go, and we're completely checked out. Go through the whole thing, pack up our stuff, put it in storage, go through the whole checkout sheet. Everything's turned in. We have our flights. We're leaving the next morning. I remember I was down there because my girlfriend and I, we volunteered together, we were going to go out in town. And the sergeant comes down and he's like, "Well, we're going to go out in town. You should come with us." We go to this karaoke kind of singing bar place, and we get a room, and we order food and we order liquor. And I'm just chilling, I'm in my head, and someone's like, "Why aren't you drinking?" I'm like, "Well, I don't really like any of this crap." And they're like, "Well, what do you like?" I'm like, "I like orange juice." And they're like, "Okay, screwdriver." I was like, "All right." And they gave me a screwdriver, and it tasted like orange juice, and I could pound a freaking gallon of orange juice. Like, I did it as a kid, and my mom would get so mad at me. She would get so mad that I would kill the orange juice like that. Anywho, so I am in my feelings. I'm feeling great. I'm 19 years old, not super experienced. I was very trusting of, the person, the E5. So I get pretty blitzed. I'm stumbling, I'm falling. And there's a point where like shit goes black. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember parts and pieces. And I remember when we were leaving, I had to be assisted out because I remember I was like coming and going, and I see a little bit. And I remember being outside, and I guess I was being combative with my friend. I wasn't being myself, and she told me, and it took us a long time to have this conversation because of the incidents that happened that night. But she told me that that I kept telling her I knew what I was doing, that everything was fine, that I kept repeating my address, and if I was drunk, I wouldn't be able to remember my home address. And she's like, I was about to like sock you, like knock you out, but I didn't want to do that. I didn't want our friendship to go down like that. So she was really trying to watch out for me. But I was too drunk. I was way too drunk, and at some point I blacked out, and that E5, the sergeant, him and his girlfriend had gotten into it, so she left at some point, and whatever, if I tripped and fell on him and things started to happen, you know, I don't remember a lot of that at all. I remember being on the floor for a while and seeing the lights, and then I remember being outside and arguing with my friend, and then I remember being in the honcho, because there was a lot of us and we were all packed in there, so there was like 3 dudes and me on top, and then 2 people in the front, because I was kind of laying down across everyone because I wasn't feeling well, and I would black out and I would wake up just to throw up. I'm not the proudest here. Like I said, I wasn't experienced, but I had never, this situation, I'd never seen the situation outside of this moment. And then we got to somewhere where we were going to spend the night because we couldn't go back on base because it was past midnight. And a lot of us were underage. I was 19 years old. So we get to somewhere, and I had to be carried. So at this point, the E5 takes me and he carries me in. And then I blacked out. And then I woke up later and I was naked, and I was like, what the fuck happened? So I'm like waking up and I see there's someone else is naked, and I'm just like, what the fuck happened? Oh my God. And I look, and it's the sergeant, and I'm just like, oh my God, oh my God. Like I was like panicking. And I remember I went to the bathroom, and I was in pain. You know, I was coming to, I didn't know what was going on. And I remember just getting in a tub, running the water, and just sitting there. I just sat there with the water running, and I washed myself up, and I just sat there for a really long time. You know,
it
like.
It was just you 2 in there?
Yeah, it was just us 2.
What kind of pain were you feeling?
I was feeling pain from my genital area. And gosh, you know, when I woke up, I was so shocked and embarrassed and ashamed. And I felt like, you know, way to go, America. Way to go to putting yourself in a situation and, you know, trusting, you know, someone that I was told I could trust, that would take care of me and all this stuff. And I really believed it. And I grew up without a dad. So now I know that I have like daddy issues and validation issues. And I can see that now reflecting back then. But back then I didn't have that knowledge, right? So I felt like, well, this was my fucking fault. I'm a fucking idiot. This is all my fucking fault. I fucked up. And that's what was going on in my head. And that you know, what am I going to tell the guy I liked? And I put my clothes back on, and I get back into the bed, and I pretend I'm asleep. And eventually he gets up and he leaves, and he doesn't come back until it's time for all of us to get in a honcho and go back on base. Like, that's when he's like, hey, we're leaving. And then I just walk out, and everyone's super quiet. Everyone's quiet. It's a very fucking quiet ride. And I was just like, I don't know what the fuck happened. At that time, I didn't realize that was without giving consent, you know, and being of mind. It took a long time in therapy to understand that I was raped. NP battalion, and then we spent like 3 weeks there doing some super intense weapons training, convoy training, how to search vehicles, you know, all that stuff. Freaking gunning. It was awesome. I freaking loved it. And I was able to, you know, I'm like, this is what I'm here for. I'm here to go to war. Fuck all that. I'm not gonna let another man take something from me. And this is something I really want to fucking do. So, you know, I focus, I get through it, I pick up all the training, and then we take off, and we get to, you know, the transition part. That was the first time I met this other sergeant. He was an MP sergeant. And I don't know what happened, but at some point we go to the motor pool, they sit us somewhere, we're waiting as usual. And this sergeant comes out. It's the first night we're freaking there. And the sergeant comes out and he's like, "Who the fuck is PFC Flores?" And I get up, I run over there, and I do my whole report thing. And he's like, "Go to the mech bay." Fuck. Like, where's the mech bay? You just pointed over there. So I go over there, and I'm just standing there. The light was on, and he comes in, and another corporal comes in, and he just starts leaning in on me. "You're a piece of shit. You don't fucking belong here. I don't want you in my platoon." All this fucking shit. And I'm like, he looks like he wants to hit me. One, in my mind, I'm like, what is going on and why is this guy yelling at me? He was very open about disliking me and giving me extra duties and just really leaning into me. So I feel like I got some special attention the first couple of months. Like, I would get in trouble for the ridiculous things.
Why?
I believe what happened is when we got that sergeant believed that I slept with him for special treatment. I truly believe he thought that. And he said it, you know? So when I was like in processing my therapy, I was like, what would make someone do that? You know what would make someone do that, Krishna? I was like, if that sergeant went and told this sergeant what happened.
That's what I was thinking.
That little bitch right there. Yeah, that one right there. Slept with me for special treatment. So for a few months, you know, the sergeant was really tough on me. And it put me in a place where I felt like I was worthless. You know, men did that to me when I was a kid. Men did this to me now. Like, there's no hope out there. You know, so I was...
You're a boot. You're a boot PFC.
Yeah.
It feels like shit to be a boot PFC when you're a fucking dude in the Marines.
Yeah.
You know? I couldn't imagine how you were feeling as a female boot PFC after something like this just happened. That's blows my mind.
It was just back to back, you know? I'm just like, what the fuck? So I was just in a space where, you know, as a child, I also struggled with depression and self-harm. So those thoughts were immediate. You know, I'm a piece of shit. I'm worthless. You know, I'm just here trying to do my best to be a badass Marine. And, you know, I keep getting knocked down. And it led to me really being in a dark place and being bloodthirsty, being super aggressive, mean, and also, I guess like suicidal. I felt like the only thing I can do with my life at that time was to die in combat. That's it. I'm gonna die out here. That's what I want. So I volunteered for anything and everything